Gold and Black Live Friday. For me, this is the first time I've done this show the Friday after Thanksgiving. I think I've had a couple people pinch hit for me. So I'm usually trying to hustle back from Thanksgiving to get back for the IU game. But this is just a time for Tom and I just to sit and talk football. And if you're there listening to us, that's great. Tom Schott will also join us, and we're going to reminisce our favorite and most interesting bowl memories, and there have been some good ones. And Tom has a good story on the site right now on Rod Woodson in the gold jersey. He talked to Tony Visco, old number 49 from Canada, right?
Tony Visco, yeah, great guy.
Very good player too. Very good defensive end.
Tough.
Yeah, very tough-minded kid. I don't know that he played in the CFL.
He did. He had a nice career in the CFL with several teams. Yep.
Check that out during our commercial breaks. And Brian Newbert will join us at 1:40 from Destin, Florida, which I guess it's like 72 degrees. Brian's sending pictures of palm trees, putting them on Twitter, so I'm glad for him. And I think he has his daughter and wife are down there as well, but he'll be working like he usually does, which is like a crazed man for the Purdue men's basketball game tonight, 9:30, CBSSports.com. Hope you have it on your cable dial or the way that you consume media, so to speak. So I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, on the hill but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. Had the beatnik omelet there yesterday with both of my kids were home, so that was a good thing. State Farm agent Trent Johnson at Trent is my agent. I didn't have it yesterday. I had it Wednesday, I should say. State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. Trent will be on the sidelines tomorrow with the Chain Gang. And Hilton Garden Inn. Tara Mason will be braving the elements tomorrow and be in the stands. Our good friends down at Hilton Garden Inn. This is our 10th year doing this show, and we've had such loyal sponsors. We appreciate them. All right, Tom. It's going to be an interesting. The bucket game, once you get to it, is always interesting because it's going to be a fun game. I understand the whole world is not watching this one. I mean, Ohio State goes head to head with Ohio State and Michigan, but it really should be an interesting game tomorrow, especially if Purdue gets lucky, which I think it's important that they can play on a dry track. But how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, we were talking before we came on camera about the weather forecast. Alan looked it up, and there's a chance for rain, it sounds like, in the morning, maybe leading right up to kickoff. Then looks like it could clear and be dry. So, again, I'm sure they'll keep that surface covered as long as they can. And like you said, Alan, we saw how Purdue operated against Illinois, about a month ago?
Yeah.
In a torrential downpour. Wasn't good. So, for Purdue's sake offensively, you'd like for the conditions to be as dry as possible. But I also pointed out to Alan, traditionally, yes, Indiana is sort of a ground and pound team, and they can still run it with Stevie Scott, who's a little banged up. But it's an IU team that likes to throw it this year. They got a fleet of good receivers.
They really do.
Walt Filliar is probably an All-Big Ten guy. Donovan Hale, good tight end as well. So again, IU, I'm sure would like to have a fast track so they can sling it around a little bit too.
Yeah, Donovan Hale last year and Hendershot combined, and Hendershot's the receiver, had combined for 18 catches last year. I didn't look that up. That surprised me in last year and produced 7-point win in Bloomington. But yeah, they have a fleet. They really do. And Peyton Ramsey, who also was dinged up last week, though will play tomorrow, but he threw for 345 yards against Purdue last year anyway. So, I think Indiana wants it to be dry. I just worry a little bit, if you're from a Purdue perspective, that Stevie Scott, that they could grind it a little bit in Purdue. We've been saying this, and maybe I need to finally kind of accept it, but you need to somehow have some kind of running game.
Yeah. Or
something. I mean, what does that look like? I mean, Xander Horvath had the one run last week where he got out and churned some yards. DeRue did not get many carries last week at all. But, what does a good run game for Purdue look like? One that does the job tomorrow for Purdue. What do you think?
Yeah, speaking of King DeRue, I was looking at some stats this morning. King DeRue's only had 9 carries in each of the last 2 games.
Yeah.
So for a good run game for Purdue, I think is one where the defense has to respect it.
Yeah.
Whoever generates it, if they can get it with a short passing game, sort of a de facto run game in that sense. I was sort of thinking about picking King DeRue to be my pick to click. Maybe he finishes out his true freshman season in style. Alan, I do think ever since the Penn State game, the offensive line has really started to gel. Now, it's not going to be confused with the 1968 Green Bay Packer offensive line, but still, it's a line that's come together, has some chemistry. They found 6 guys they like to play. And if you look at the defensive stats for IU, they're not overwhelmingly great. So if I'm Purdue, I try to come out and run a little bit. And if you can do that, you take some pressure off Aiden O'Connell, because as Jeff Brom said, if he's got time to pass, he's going to find the receivers. He's a very accurate quarterback, too.
Well, and interestingly, Jeff Brom knows how to do a lot of things offensively. I mean, he's got, if there's a scheme, he seems to know that. Purdue, and I understand it is very different, but the last 2 years has run the ball quite well against Indiana. Of course, Markel Jones gets 217 yards, I believe it was 2 years ago, in that 7-point win in West Lafayette, and then had about 90-some last year. DJ Knox also ran the ball, at least from a yards per carry perspective, pretty well last year in Bloomington. And that's what I mean. Is that the point you're getting at, that there may be a way just defensively that there's you can crack some seams and maybe pick up some yardage? It's the time of season to do that, certainly, as it's progressed.
It is. And then, Alan, I think you have to factor in the intangibles here too, right?
Yeah.
Indiana's lost 2 of these games in a row to Purdue. Tom Allen is yet to beat Purdue. Jeff Brom's 2-0. IU's bowl postseason ticket has already been stamped. They're going to the postseason, win or lose.
But this game does matter in terms of bowl location for them.
Exactly
so.
right. Talking to Pete DePremio and some other media members, they've lost 2 games in a row here to quality opposition at Penn State and to Michigan. They don't want to go into the bowl selection process on a 3-game losing streak.
Yeah.
A lot of motivation there for IU and for Purdue as well. They want to bid goodbye to these seniors. And let's be honest, this is sort of a de facto bowl for Purdue. I mean, what better way to end what's been a very trying season than by beating your rival for a 3rd year in a row? So I think there's some good motivation on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think Jeff Brom has made no bones, and certainly the talk around the program has been, we being Purdue have to do everything to make ourselves ready for next year. But that means, not only evaluating players, and we talked about, you guys, I think, asked him about December and how important that will be. They won't be in bowl practices, but in terms of, what can they do in the weight room to get ready for spring practice. But I think mentally this is a big game for Purdue as you launch this next season, because there is going to be high hopes next year, with making the assumption that Rondale Moore will be back, and there are a lot of other guys that didn't play due to injury this year that will be back, and all of a sudden you're going to be walking into a season where you're going to have to hit the ground running next year. I mean, you got Nebraska on the road to open the season, but first things first, I think there's a lot on the line for Purdue, and I think Jeff Brom is oftentimes at his best when you kind of undersell Purdue's chances, and I think Purdue's a 7+ point underdog. That's somewhat of a rarity in West Lafayette against Indiana. I think it's only happened twice in the last 10 games. Indiana's only won twice in Ross-Ade Stadium, I believe, in its last 10 appearances. But I think that's the thing that's going to be kind of interesting to watch. Tom Allen in Indiana. The Hoosiers have made steps, there's no doubt this year, but the combined record of the Hoosiers' victories, 7 victories, the records of the teams they beat to date, 19 and 59. That's only a 32% winning percentage, and I know Purdue's 4 victories to date. You're only at 38%, but my point is that Indiana needs to prove something to itself and to everybody else, and it might make a difference. They could still be on the outside, but they could be looking at a Florida Bowl possibly if everything shakes out. Right now, there's a lot of people thinking if they don't, they could also be end up playing Air Force in the Armed Forces Bowl, but we'll know that a week from Sunday. But that gives motive. Tom Allen also an interesting guy from a coaching standpoint. He reminds me of Tom Crean. I can't get past that, but he's done a very good job. Obviously, came to Indiana with a defensive bent to him, and yet his offense has been really pretty good this year. And a new coordinator too. That's been a plus for them, or a relatively new coordinator.
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer is the new coordinator. Has done a great job at IU. Remember this too. Michael Penix Jr. is their quarterback, and he's been hurt.
Yeah, and out, right? He had clavicle surgery. Yeah,
anybody who's seen him play will vouch for his effectiveness. A very good quarterback, and again, step back, but for IU's benefit, they had Peyton Ramsey waiting in reserve, of course, who had a lot of experience. But Alan, to your point about Purdue winning this game, it would give them some bounce to their step as the coaches hit the road to go recruit. And as the players begin that long winter grind towards spring football and lifting weights, and that was something Jeff Brom emphasized to the reporters on Thursday, get stronger, get stronger, get stronger. I
Yeah.
think he said it three
Three times. He
So,
did, yeah.
You know, we all know the limitations of Purdue. This is, you know, game 12. There are no secrets personnel-wise. Purdue's deficient up front on both sides of the ball. They need to get bigger. They need to get stronger. And again, all this work takes place in the off season, not in the fall, obviously. So a win over your rival, Allen, would be a great way just to get you psychologically ready for that long haul.
And one thing he mentioned, and Brian Newbert will be covering some of this as well as we get to signing day, which is third week in December, third Wednesday. Tom Schott will know what day it is, but I think it's December 20th or in that ballpark. But key thing there he talked about is the fact not only do you go out and try to make sure here in the next couple two weeks, and the way the schedule works, they have only 2 weeks of time to be out. You're going to go back and make sure everything is secure from the kids that you have committed. But there's also a lot of work to be done, as Jeff Brom talked about last night and has been talking about, in the junior college ranks, potentially. Maybe not the transfer portal. You can't really deal that much with that at this point, though there may be some guys that will graduate at semester that you could, I guess. But that's an interesting storyline, too. He still is clearly talking about he'd like to be closer to where he was in the heading into the 17 season, where he had 7, 8, 9 guys that came and contributed, as opposed to where he was this year when Ben Holt was really the lone one that's come in and helped this football team.
They need help right away.
Yeah.
They need just add water players, I like to call them, plug-and-play guys who are mature physically, mentally, the JUCOs, maybe like Alan said, a grad transfer, especially up front. Again, the offensive line, defensive tackle, and linebacker, I think, are the priority spots to add veteran talent. And also keep your eye on the quarterback position. Brian's written about that extensively on the site in his recruiting coverage. Could be in the market for a grad transfer quarterback.
Yeah.
Just to get another veteran in that room. Now, of course, the status of Elijah Sinlar, who could return for his 6th season, is still up in the air, so that's a dynamic. Maybe the staff knows something. Who knows? Stay tuned. But again, don't be shocked if maybe they add a veteran presence to that quarterback spot.
You know, you talked about it, and I think even Jeff Brom's admitted to, and I think one thing I do appreciate about him is the fact that he's willing to admit, you know, this has been a learning process. And it's not, when he talks about developing everyone, I think the way that, because of the catastrophic level of injuries, the number of injuries this year have been so off the chain, that it has been a further reminder that, you know what? You may have Aiden O'Connell, and you may have Jack Plummer and Paul Paferi or whatever in your room next year. You could have Elijah Sindelar, but if you've got other guys that are ready to if you got somebody else that wants to come and be part of this, I think you're. Who'd have thought you'd ever be your fourth string quarterback in essence at this point in the season anyway? So it's proof that you need depth. The good teams have it. And that's always going to be a challenge. You can't prepare for what Purdue had happened to it, I don't think, this year. But by the same token, it's just further. If you can get good players to come in here, I think it's the more the merrier.
Competition, Alan.
Yeah.
You know, it makes everybody better. It's human nature, I think, to get lackadaisical, to lose your edge. If there's not somebody chomping at your heels behind you, I think. What do you think Jack Plummer thinks about Aiden O'Connell right now?
Yeah.
How bad do you think Jack Plummer wants to get back out on the field? I mean, that's what you want. And again, like you said, veteran guys can come in and really sharpen everybody's focus and their competitive edge by having to fight for jobs. Because anytime you got to fight for something, you're better. So again, you're right about Brom talking about the need to develop everybody. He mentioned that specifically. And like you said, I think this has been a learning experience for him, for the entire staff, because to a man, and we asked Nick Holt about this too, have you ever been through a season like this? And they never have. So everybody learns every day of their life, and certainly this has been a big experience. One I'm sure that nobody wanted to go through for Purdue's sake, but a big learning experience on, again, the urgency and the need to make sure all hands are on deck and you got a deep roster.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting storyline tomorrow. Brian from Florida, who will be on our show here in about 20, 25 minutes, will post our predictions. And I really do think, especially, I'd really hope, not just for Purdue's sake, I hope we have a dry track tomorrow, because I would really like to see a competitive football game that is not literally bogged down by a lot of rain, because I think it's going to be a really interesting game. Because I've been amazed now that you can go back and watch Purdue and the way the Boilermakers have put things together kind of one step at a time. It's if you can take the wins and losses out of it a little bit. I know that's hard to do, but it's been really interesting to see how they've patched this thing together, and it'll be interesting to watch the match, the wits of Tom Allen versus Jeff Brom. I think two coaches that respect one another, but it will be a storyline and more to play for than you would think. I know IU's set for its bowl, as Tom had mentioned. I know Purdue is not going bowling, but I think this game really has a lot of importance to it as we look forward to down the road. Okay, we're going to take a 2-minute break, bring in Tom Schott. And Tom, Senior Associate Athletic Director, Strategic Communications. We are going to talk about our favorite bowl, that's a Freudian slip, but a bucket game memories. And Tom obviously has been around a while. We're all of the three, the Tom, and Alan, we're all getting up there in age, so we've been seeing a lot of bucket games.
Probably.
What?
Probably 100 years worth of
Yeah,
games.
but that's a good thing, and it's fun. I think there's been some really interesting games. We'll reminisce a little bit about that as we get to our second segment on Golden Black Live. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.